This is TVA by Jenna, a podcast about real human issues brought to you by Dark Crazy
This is TVA at my dinner. My name is Sean. I'm here with Andrew.
How's it going?
Good to see you again. It's been a little while.
Yes. Lots of news. Lots of things happening.
Yeah, not anything. I do want to talk some Superman tonight because it seems like there's some fun new Superman stuff going on. But we can go wherever the conversation takes us, as we do.
Yeah, it feels like it's been so supercharged. I mean, pun intended, supercharged lately because of. I think it's because like WandaVision. And like WandaVision happened and made me rewatch all these MCU movies because it kind of makes you want to watch them again. And then now we have the Snyder Cut thing coming out too. It's like
I did have to watch Age of Ultron for sure again, since that's like feeds right into it. It meant a lot to sort of bone up on Age of Ultron because that's prelude directly into. It makes me kind of miss that version of Vision because I love Vision, but it seems like Ultron like built him up as like this really important superhero. He's like the super, like the good Ultron. He's like, he never does anything in any of the MCU movies to help turn the tide. In fact, he just becomes a liability and dies. Like, he's never the one that tips the scale, except maybe in the fight against Ultron. Well, I hate that.
Yeah, the new Rockstars today, they had a video. I just watched it. We're talking about, I guess, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen WandaVision, like episode 7, 8. The most recent one.
I guess it's 8 because it's only 9 episodes and we are on the penultimate episode as far as we know. This is the finale coming up.
But there's a big theory, that we have the White Vision coming back or whatever, and that actually is just going to be Ultron basically. Because if you take Vision out of that,
if you take the humanity out of him, and he's just like
that's what it was,
robot.
Because he's that with Jarvis in there. But they had a theory that Ultron might have survived because they make the thing that they never show him blow up that last drone, right?
I guess, but what's the value? Because you hear people saying, well, maybe that director of S.W.O.R.D. is Ultron. It's like, you guys are just grasping. Put that in the narrative and make it make sense.
I mean, to me, I would just
reveal.
To me, I just think it would make sense that like it's the robot and Vision's not in there anymore. Like his soul's not there.
Yeah, so and I think that's. And everyone's kind of having fun because Paul Bettany had said, like, there's a big cameo of someone I've wanted to work with forever. And he's like just this great actor and there's amazing chemistry. And everyone's like, he's talking about himself.
Yeah.
Like everyone's like laughing. Like, did he troll us this whole time by saying he's going to act opposite himself in the final episode? And maybe also, there's not like a cameo that at least not that he was alluding to by saying that. Like, I think there is still going to be a big reveal for a villain in this because I don't think Agatha, if we're just going to it'll be out before you see this video, but we haven't seen the final episode yet. But I just have a feeling Agatha is not going to be the actual antagonist of WandaVision.
No, because she's just trying to figure out. She's like, oh, you got a lot of power. Where is it? We'll get to that second. Yeah, I guess we'll talk about it because it's.
We can.
It's a good time
we're
to
all
talk
over
about
the
it.
place. Before we get into the super news,
predictions are always fun for us to make and put on record because then they either I'm right or not. But I think nobody's actually saying the obvious thing because before I was like, I hope Vision lives after this,
which I think he will.
And I think he will too. One, just because Paul Bettany's also mentioned not being fired in interviews. It's like, well, he's not done yet, obviously, but also. We're not like stating the obvious, like dramatic question being put forward, which is like they're just two puzzle pieces. We already have them right now. We have a Vision that's Vision's soul without the memories,
and now we have the Vision body without the soul,
with the memories without the soul. It's like just
so we're gonna put the chocolate and the peanut butter.
Yeah, and that's like there's two puzzle pieces. I mean, I think it's obvious, right? I think it's like he just has to go in there, and if he can put himself inside that body, then he's alive again.
The only thing I could see, and I don't think they're building up to this, but the only thing I could see that would be an interesting dramatic ending is if the spirit of Vision that she is resurrected somehow sacrifices himself to bring life to those two children.
True, that could happen.
But I don't see how that tracks. Like, they're as real as he is. He doesn't really have a dog in that fight to say whether or not they're alive. So I don't see that sacrifice being meaningful in the story because I don't see where he has the power to make that happen. So I do sort of,
and emotionally, we
think
don't care
they're
about
gonna.
these kids either that much.
I don't know what the thing will be, but I do think they'll end up somehow becoming real, and I do think that somehow, in some form, he will end up being.
I mean, yeah,
alive.
It's been stated that everything else is real coming out of there, right? Except for
the
Vision
X factor is him trying to leave.
And he got like
the
pulled
hex,
apart.
and it looked like he couldn't survive outside it.
But
now, we're not sure that's the situation, but it looked like they were suggesting that.
Right. And the whole idea, like in Infinity Wars, that he just can't survive. But that's what Shuri was doing, though. She was like untangling. And that made me think, are they going to bring her in or some of that stuff? Because
it could be fun.
Remember, she explicitly like grabbed something, like she grabbed her work and ran before the guy Clay was great, whatever the people's names are, came in. Remember, like she finished, but she didn't get blown. She fought the guy, but she grabbed whatever she was doing.
I could see that. I could see that being a thing.
Because that's a tied thread that we haven't seen her yet, or seen,
Or they could say, we had 5 years post Thanos snap that we were researching all that stuff. Sword could have all of that research, because the thing is, like, everybody wants this Sword director to end up being some kind of bad guy because he's kind of a heel,
right?
But what he wants to do, his motivation is understandable. Like, he's just like Nick Fury was in Avengers. It's like, this thing happened, like this god thing came from space, snapped his fingers, and then half the people in the universe, which included half the people on Earth, just disappeared. Right. And then for 5 years, that was just the situation. Superheroes didn't have a plan. For all we know, they kind of helped exacerbate that situation into happening in the first place. Mm-hmm. Like, so we can't count on them being the ones that would fix something. So we have, like, imagine, like, when Nick Fury saw Loki, he was like, we need a strategy. He formed the Avengers. Like, this is way worse than Loki. And then Nick Fury is out of the picture, but obviously he's off in space doing something sword related too. So this guy's not rogue. What this guy's doing. He was like, we've got this one thing that we have, which was an effective sort of weapon against stuff like that. If we could bring that back online, that could help. Like, sentient weapons is our deal. That's what our agency is all about. Like, if we could bring superheroes as a part of that, that's fine too. But whatever edge we can use, because like with Thanos, it happened in the snap of a finger. Like, we're not going to have a whole lot of time to negotiate when the next Thanos comes along, and we can't count on the superheroes, because even with the win, they brought it in 5 years later, and it was a Hail Mary. Right. We want to have something a little bit more structured to that. I get this guy. I know people don't like him.
Well, but I like him because it's like, and this sort of might be an issue with the Superman show. We'll talk about it in a second later. Yeah. But I like when military people, or these people, like, and this has to do with politics in the world right now too. I don't like when people ascribe more intent to like villains than like all this conspiracy stuff. It's like they're just doing their job. And I like how his thing, she's like, I want to take him. She's like, I can't give you $3 billion of vibranium to go bury. It's like, because even if I were going to do that, it'd be like how long before some other claw came along and just dug it up? That's like, but it just doesn't, like, we're not going to give you that money. You just, sorry, that's not. My bigger question there is like, what, like Wakanda, what happened? So you guys let Sword come into Wakanda and get Vision's body, basically? Somebody is thinking Wakanda may be working with Sword. Like, we're only seeing like the tip of the iceberg. Well, because we're made to lead. They've had like a kind of an evil tint because he like tried to attack her or whatever, and people don't like him, right? But it was started by her mother. Like, they're not necessarily like some evil organization. Like, they become like sort of antagonists, but they're not necessarily antagonists. Well, and first of all, you can tell that he was trying to manipulate Wanda into trying to bring the Vision back, not understanding that she could somehow take an entire town hostage. That made him a little defensive. But also, though he says that, like, we don't all have the ability to just bring our soulmate back to life, sort of makes you think maybe that dude's got some history, like some things that, I mean, I know everyone that got snapped came back, but those can't have all been happy endings. Even if we want to believe that somehow they didn't have like a plane load of people just appear over the Atlantic and just fall into the ocean
5 years later. Even
Well, I'm
if they
thinking about all the
couldn't make
relationships
that
that
happen.
thing where people died and then they moved on and got remarried, and
Yeah,
then their
or
husband comes
anything.
back like, okay.
Or,
It's like-
he might have had some affection for her mom, for that
Right.
matter, and then she died in that time. So whatever else is going on, we're still the victim.
Well, that's what's interesting. But that's an interesting point. I didn't realize it now. We only think he's bad just because he tried to fire on her that time. But I was like, but other than that, he's just sort of like a government. But now it just feels like, oh, they're the bad guys and they're keeping Monica down and stuff.
It's an easy go-to. But he's been trying to keep her out of it. And in his mind, every time she goes through that barrier, it changes her DNA. They don't know that's going to make her a superhero. It could kill her.
Right.
They don't know what it'll do to her. So from another perspective, he's trying to keep her out of harm's way.
Right. And it's like, and she took over a town and has them hostage for weeks. Maybe we should take her out. That's like a pretty reasonable response to that too. It's like
we have an opportunity to take a shot and it saves a town full of people who are being mind controlled. Maybe we take that shot. So I'm not saying he's going to turn out to be a good guy. I don't see him being the bad guy. I certainly don't see him being a secret bad guy. This idea that he'll turn out to be Mephisto or some bullshit, that makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I think, they have a lot of, I mean, that's what I'm saying. If you think about landing the plane, like I see the puzzle pieces in place for Vision combining, that seems pretty obvious.
That seems like the obvious way. I'm sure like I said, there's got to be at least one more big reveal because I do believe there's a big villain. Because I don't think Agatha is the big villain.
No, but either. I do think, I think that's that side. And I do think there's a mystical side that we're not seeing yet. There is something.
Yeah, it could be Nightmare. It could be Mephisto. I don't see how you're going to slide either one of those guys into the last episode and make it play. Because you already had an exposition dump.
It seems like that would be a teaser for the Doctor Strange thing. They don't even have to explain.
And that could happen. Yeah. Like, this could resolve and suggest someone else is behind it and we don't know who, and that's revealed in Doctor Strange. I could see that happen.
Like I could see her getting lost into some dimensional thing at the end of this, like Vision coming back and being like, oh, where'd she go? And like now she's dead basically.
And the Loki show is going to bring in some supernatural kind of stuff. So,
and that's this year too, right? So that's in the fall.
Yeah, it'll be Falcon and Winter Soldier next, and then Loki after that, and Hawkeye somewhere. I don't know what we're going to get out of Hawkeye.
They're shooting that now up here. So
Hawkeye?
Yeah, they're shooting that in Canton.
Yeah, and Loki's starting in whenever, I think it's June. It falls right around the time that Falcon and Winter Soldier. So I assume Hawkeye would probably be ready, or they want it ready for whenever Loki is done. But by then, it'll be time for Spider-Man 3 this Christmas.
Yeah, I didn't realize that until we saw that trailer. That was it. Can't Go Home, which is another. Is that what it's called? Can't Go Home.
No Way Home.
No Way Home. But that's like. That's like literally like almost like a Back to the Future multiverse sort of thing happening in that title too. You're like, yeah,
because I kind of feel like, yeah, this is going to sort of open the door to a multiverse sort of thing, but not all the way because we've only got one episode left. So Loki will probably play into that more because it's coming right around way closer to the release of Spider-Man 3. So Loki will probably lean into that more.
Well, and we know in Spider-Man 3, the rumors of Tobey Maguire, that's still just a rumor. But
yeah,
Jamie
but they
Foxx
confirmed
and Alfred
Molina and
Jamie Foxx. So
I guess they could keep the casting, but the idea is that those are going to be.
And they're both from the different franchises too. One's from Amazing and one is from the Tobey Maguire one.
Yeah, so and that's so much fun.
Yeah,
that's the way to do it. I don't want to because there's all this talk now that Evan Peters was just stunt casting to troll people, and hopefully that's not all it is because that falls flat within the story. So hopefully they're not doing stunt casting in Spider-Man 3.
Possession.
Yeah, she acted like now. She didn't say I pulled him from another dimension or anything like that.
But
she definitely did suggest that it's a real person that she's controlling.
Yeah.
Instead of necromancy.
She said she would have basically done the other body, but it was full of holes and across the country, across the world. Really, yikes.
Yeah, and they're standing in this nexus point between dimensions. Nobody has put any theories that I've seen as to how the glyphs over those doors in the basement, one of them turned into an M, the other one turned into a G. So I don't know. The M might mean Mephisto, or it might mean the mutant universe or Magneto or something. So
Mephisto is just the devil, though, Marvel. Right?
Yeah, that's why that's not. I know he's all over the comics in the source material that they're pulling for this, but you'd have to do something more interesting than that to bring him into the MCU because he is just the devil. And every comic book story he's in is bad. You can't just bring him in because
I mean,
every
he's
one
like
of those
really
stories is
the
dumb.
devil, or is he just like some kind of another dimension? Like
Well, I don't know
Thanos or
how
something?
Marvel might say that hell is another dimension, but he's the
Probably,
devil as far as we can tell as far as he is in the comics. Nightmare's a little bit more interesting because he's just sort of a supernatural bad guy that's more like Mysterio.
like
That
Fred
gives people
Krueger,
bad dreams.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. I could see them using Nightmare a little more effectively here. And certainly that's something that would lead into Doctor Strange. Mephisto's just not an interesting villain because you can't do anything with him. That's why the comic book stories that he's in, like when you're like, well, Mephisto's soul was broken and that's where fragments of those souls became those two kids. It's like, I know you guys are getting nuts in WandaVision, but you do have to pump the brakes at some point for the people who will never read the comics. And the point where in the last episode, when you just say the devil's soul got broken and that's where these two kids came from, like, no.
Right.
I'm going to stop you there on narrative grounds. Like, I don't care whether it's true to the comics that way, but that's just nothing aside from making a bunch of Easter egg devil references for fun throughout the show. Nothing in the actual narrative leads us in that direction.
I was thinking, because if you think about that WandaVision, if we think about, hey, there might be a cameo coming still.
Sure.
If we don't think it's
I think there will be. I think there'll be a big bad guy. I was trying to think, cameo.
And you have to say it's somebody Paul Bettany hasn't worked with, so it's not Robert Downey Jr. I mean, it's like you go through these like things. It's not. I mean, as much as like cool, if I still think it could. There could be two. He could talk with Ultron's voice, which I think would be sort of cool. That it's like Ultron.
That would actually be really cool.
Yeah, but he's worked with him before, so that's not. And then I was looking at that announcement when they did Multiverse of Madness. And because I watched Doctor Strange again, it's like Chiwetel Ejiofor is still in the new movie. When they set him up to be a bad guy,
and he would be a cool one. I don't know.
And he's a big actor. I mean, he's like Academy Award winning nominated actor. Like, so
this would be a weird play for him if he's trying to stop all wizards in order to just pump this wizard full of as much magic as he can get out of her.
Maybe he's trying to attract her. Yeah, maybe he's trying to drink,
using her as a honeypot to bring in other wizards like Agatha is attracted to this level of power.
So I was like, he could be. Well, I just wonder if because it like that movie was like he was sort of he was like a helper of an antagonist light, and then I was like, are they just? I was trying to think of what that movie is going to be about. If it's a big bad and also still him, you feel like he's going to be involved with the big bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I kind of feel like because he's cool, but I couldn't see him being the villain of Doctor Strange 2. I kind of feel like you're saying like he would be working with the big bad, and I kind of feel like his arc would be more interesting if he was brought back around to being a good guy.
Oh, really?
Because I just don't see him as being that fun as a bad guy. They did that at the end of the movie where he's like, and now I'm going to kill all wizards. It's like, well, that's a fun thing to say in the stinger, but that's a boring arc for him if he just becomes a bad guy with no nuance after that.
Yeah, he plays a good bad guy.
He's a great actor. That's why it's a waste if you just make him a two-dimensional bad guy.
Right.
You really have to work at it.
Well, that's why he's sort of wasted in Doctor Strange. He's just like, we should follow the rules, guys. I was like, come on, dude. It's like everybody's like,
yeah,
that's all he does in that whole movie. It's like, but at what price? I'm like, shut up, man. Like
that's why you should bring him in these TV shows because you can, like they did with Kat Dennings, you can bring in these characters that you couldn't find use for in the movies and give them new life. And there's so much fun. Her and Randall Park running around. They're so much fun to see those characters in the TV show, and you never really think much about them in the movies.
Yeah, and they have way more. I mean, somebody was saying that now, like she's approaching having more lines than even like Jane or something in the MCU. If you like have these characters,
and she's more interesting because she's not there to be anybody's love interest or whatever.
Right.
She's just there to be an interesting character, and I mean, she's comic relief, but she's not solely comic relief like she was in Thor. Like she's carrying plot points.
Right.
So it is more fun to see her in that role. And it's more fun to see somebody just have that role where I'm just here to help. I'm not here to like service the hero in some fashion. Like I don't attach to the lead. Like I have my own thing going on. And she's fun that way.
Movie too, like Love and Thunder. It's like, it's like, oh yeah, they don't have an Asgard anymore. So it's not like we're always used to Thor. Like, yeah, we're gonna go off to Asgard. Or like, no, they're just gonna be
Love and Thunder is
I guess it's
pretty wild because you get him.
Jane's in it. I was like, how are you going to bring her back into like?
Well, she's supposed to become Thor.
I know. It's like,
so that's like a really cool arc to bring in and try to make that work, because that's such a big story to tell in a movie.
Right. And you have the Guardians, or at least Star-Lord's in that one too. Like, there's the people that are just in it. Like, that's pretty cool. It's
so it's a fully cosmic sort of movie. Yeah, it's fun.
And they said that there's a rumor. Now we're just doing a Marvel grab back too. They said there's a rumor that Eternals movie, like the early. Have you seen that? I saw that in a couple YouTube, like real YouTube video. People were like, people who have seen it internally say they're like blown away by it. Like it's one of their best movies ever.
Oh, good. So did they wrap shooting? Are they good on that?
It was supposed to come out last July.
That's good. I'm just worried about Kumail. Like, I don't think he committed to stay in that kind of shape for that long.
Well, they already shot it there by the time. They had already shot it. But it's like they have really good timing for that, because that director is like Chloe Zhao. She's about to win that Nomadland movie that just won the Golden Globe for Best Drama. Will probably win the Academy Award. She directed that. So they're about to have like the award. Like,
maybe I should check that out. That's on Hulu right now.
I haven't watched it, but it's like that's great timing. You have like, oh, and by the way, she just won the Academy Award. Here's a Marvel movie that she just directed which hasn't happened yet. I was like, wow.
Well, that'll be fun. I'm looking forward to the Eternals. I just think that's a fun kind of thing.
I never even to me that's like Guardians. I have no idea what the Eternals are.
I never read that comic. I'm a big Jack Kirby fan, but I never read the Eternals. I like the DC Jack Kirby stuff more, and they're supposed to make a new Gods movie, but they haven't gotten around. Snyder is the only one using those, and it's not great.
Yeah, what's her name was going to make it? The Wrinkle in Time director.
DuVernay.
Yeah,
Ava
she was doing
DuVernay, I think was her name. Yeah, she did and Wrinkle in Time wasn't great, but
yeah, it's just that's that source material. I mean, I know that probably gets a bunch of hate.
Well, there's a lot of weird casting to me on that. Like, it was very hard to stay in the movie because of some of the casting choices. They had a lot of great people in the movie, but they should have focused more on those kid characters. They had a good story with the characters, and then they just had these huge names playing nothing roles. And you're like, this is taking me out of it. Come on.
That girl that's in that, her name is like, her name's Storm Reed. She has like the most Fantastic Four sounding name.
For real.
just their two last names. But yeah, I was like, it's weird. I was like, I'm looking forward to it. Now there's rumors also of a Captain America thing coming back. Like, I was like, what is it?
Maybe they're just going to do that for What If or something. I do not want.
Maybe.
I love Steve Rogers, but I don't want him to come back. I like his arc. I like them following Winter Soldier and Falcon in the aftermath of his disappearance, like of him being gone and trying to figure out how to fill his shoes. If Steve Rogers is back, you don't have that story. Like, I really want to see what Falcon and Winter Soldier do, because Falcon's supposed to take up the mantle of Captain America. Winter Soldier is just there to kind of help. And between the two of them, figure out how they sort of honor the legacy of Steve Rogers. Unless they just have a one-off idea for a Steve Rogers story.
Yeah,
I'd rather see them do that like in What If or something. I don't want to see them make a Secret Empire movie where he's like, it's a version of him that's evil from another dimension. Like, you guys are gonna have to rein it in on some of that.
Yeah, they have so much stuff. They have so much, like, I mean, they're Fantastic Four and X-Men. It's like they have another 20 years of movies.
Yeah, you got a toy chest. Play with those toys. Like,
and they're going to get their
Iron Man or
they're going to have like Ironheart, which is like a cool version of Iron Man. They're going to have versions of the,
Yeah,
and you're
it's fun to see what the MCU does with the lack of those two iconic heroes.
But with the continuity where the people are picking up the mantle, but it's the same sort of thing. But it's like, yeah, that's pretty cool.
They did it perfectly. They left it in a really good place to continue. And now that they have this sort of TV world to develop, they can sort of play in that realm and try new ideas out that they wouldn't have done in a movie. Like, WandaVision wouldn't have worked as a movie.
No.
But it's perfect as a TV show. And it's their first TV show, and it plays into TV as part of its format and narrative. Like, that's great, guys.
Oh, and to me, it's like, just keep making these shows. It's just like with Mandalorian with this stuff, because they said Kevin Feige, I watched an interview, they said these are all, because they're asking about episode lengths or something. This is like a recent, in the middle of WandaVision airing. He's like, they're all 6 hours, basically. That's how we produce them. Yeah, so some episodes can be 30. I think this one that means this one's probably around 50 minutes, which makes sense for like a finale. So it's like 6 hours.
Snyder Cut, which is going to be a 4-hour single film.
But that's like getting 3 movies, though. So if you think like
they should have. Yeah, that's great. That's what people
they're
say
spending
about the
money
Mandalorian. Like,
yeah.
we're hardly getting anything on the Mandalorian. It's like 3 movies in this one season of TV, and like that's hardly anything. It's like, man, you're spoiled.
Yeah, so it's like you get 4 Marvel movies, but like between Loki, that's like 9 movies they were getting out of just and it'd be different if it was like TV quality, but they're spending all the money. They're spending just as much money on these shows.
Yeah,
I mean this one's weird. This one, like you could say, it's much more domesticated, and it's like, but like look at that Falcon and Winter Soldier trailer. It's like it looks like any of the Captain America movie ever.
But it's like all the stuff that you like without the big third act, nothing sort of shit blowing up ending. Because we were watching Age of Ultron because of WandaVision, and we're watching, and he's got like an engine where he's lifting this city up, and he's going to drop it on the Earth. And we're like, this is the dumbest fucking plan in the world. Right. But it's superhero movies. They all end with
that movie does get better and better.
It's a good movie.
Like, I remember watching it and thinking it's funny, but I was like, this is just a mess. It feels like it's aged better than.
The Black Widow stuff doesn't age very well.
No, but
it didn't come off very well, so it's not like it's aged badly. In comparison. I think people didn't like it at that time either.
Yeah, I mean that's what I mean. Josh Whedon's a mixed bag with stuff, but what
the rest of it works really well.
What he is a great writer, and he has such high language with Ultron that you just kind of skim over the first few times. But if you really listen to what he says, I'm like, this is actually pretty good. Like this is actually a pretty well written like thing, which you just didn't care about when the first time you watched it. You're like, yeah, okay.
And Black Widow and Hulk aside, there are a lot of great character moments in that movie. Like,
what's the thing that I mean? It's Iron Man 3 is the weird Tony moment of all these that kind of messes with it, but it really does pick up on a good. It's like the Iron Man 3 ending shouldn't happen, and this picked up right away because they just acted like that didn't happen, and they're like,
it doesn't serve our narrative. We'll just keep going.
But
what I like is like
that is interesting. Like Tony feeling responsible for everything. It's a good fulcrum point for that stuff. I think
you can't replicate the success of the MCU because it's half accidental. Because one of the things that's always been fun about their adaptability is what makes them work. Because it seems like Jon Favreau got it started with Iron Man. Iron Man was very strong, and the Iron Man stuff. They had 2 Iron Man movies before they ever had an Avengers movie. And so they were able to introduce everybody. Iron Man had 2 movies, so he was like the lead going into Avengers. And then they brought in Joss Whedon. It's like someone needs to make sense of all this mess. And they brought in Joss Whedon for the first time, and he was the one who really brought all that together. And he made
that tone and everything just like
the story's nonsense if you look at the plot, but the way the characters work and interact and the scenes, and it's so much fun, and it just works. And you're like, now we have an MCU. Now we know what we're doing. And so they sort of played off of that. They got one more movie with Joss Whedon doing Avengers. And then they're like, now it needs to change again. Like they didn't just decide that. Circumstances sort of decided it for them too. And they were able to bring in the Russo brothers.
Well, they came in
who had started working on the Captain America franchise. So by the time Civil War came along, Civil War was a Secret Avengers movie.
Well, but also the 2 heroes that are the soul of the whole thing is that Chris Marcus and Stephen McFeely, because they wrote the first Avenger. They wrote Captain America 1.
Yeah, 2, and they don't get any credit.
Endgame and Infinity War. They wrote
they're consistent
the whole
throughout.
Thing. Yeah. And that movie is that's the one that ages better than all of them. Because you saw that. I remember seeing that in the theater. It's weird to go back at how big, and that's why I've been rewatching them, not to just dote all over Marvel, but they're so good. That's why when you read those Iron Scorsese quotes and all that stuff, you're like, you guys are nuts. Because these movies are hitting on every level. They're actually really well done. And they're so well written.
They have a rewatchability because those scenes resonate. Like you can always tear apart the story of superhero movies because they're kind of dumb.
Whatever.
But the scenes resonate with
because the character, it's all the character based. And it's like with those guys, and that one does so well, but those guys just, I don't know. I mean, they really have it's good that they came on with Captain America because he ends up being the soul of the entire thing, like the backbone.
Yeah, and that first Captain America movie is so good. It's not as appreciated as the others, but it's so good.
My favorite is still, I went through this and it's like, it might be into my top movies that I like. The first Avengers is an achievement. Like, I think it's I think he's so good at structuring movies when he doesn't have a bunch of stuff to do. That's why I think that Firefly movie is one of the best structured. I really love that Firefly movie, Serenity.
Mm-hmm.
But I think
it's mostly good.
Well, I like just the way the structure is, the motivations. That's what he does really well with motivations, like turning into like conflict, turning into motivation, turning into. But Civil War is my favorite. I think. I mean, Endgame is amazing. Is better than Endgame's great, but it's like a huge thing. But Civil War,
yeah, it's the event that makes it
interesting.
Watching Endgame is like watching Return of the Jedi. There's like some event-based stuff in Return of the Jedi that makes it rewatchable because of its. But like Empire is the one that works as a movie better,
right?
And that's why Civil War is. Civil War really,
Civil
War set the tone. Like, this is where the Avengers is going to go, and it really did set the tone as to where the story was headed, like where the character conflicts were, and where the resolutions needed to come from. Everything from Infinity War and Endgame that worked came out of Civil War. Now, they took some great stuff from the Avengers films and from Ultron,
right?
But it was sort of put together as a better conflict in Civil War that we knew it needed to be, because Ultron did bring up that argument between Tony and Steve, but it seemed to be resolved within the film, because they're like, we need to make a vision. It's like, no, you should not do that. They're like, well, we're going to do it. It's like, well, okay then. And then it was fine. So that conflict didn't have anywhere else to breathe. But then Civil War said, well, what about this other issue where they have the same ideological problem, but there isn't an easy fix where one can see the other is right. And it's left unresolved, and then that becomes the crux of the entire
they do
MCU.
Such a good job of holding the conflict from their first, like, they have the little conference scene. That's a great scene, to like where they get arrested and they're talking to each other, like at the little base thing, to when they're at the airport arguing about it. They do such a good job of making it believable until it needs to go, okay, because then they do a really realistic job of going, eventually these guys are going, okay, let's just be on the same team. They're fine. They're not angry with each other. And then they hit you with the actual one thing that can make them irrational.
They have those emotional beats that they know are going to drive that point.
Which is like funny, because it's like happened the same time as BVS, which was like centered around the parents being.
Yeah, that's what we laughed at the time. It's like, guys,
it's the same.
You came out within a month of this other movie.
Their connection and conflicts based on the same thing too, and they're trying to hit the same notes, which is so crazy. But they did it. It's like, you killed my mom. He's like, did you know? And you're like, he did know. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's bad. That's why also people said that, because I've been watching some of those videos like Captain Midnight stuff since then, and they're like, that's probably why Tony Cap couldn't quite lift that hammer back then, because he was holding a secret. He wasn't totally pure.
There's this sort of retcon fan theory that was like, Cap could have lifted the hammer, but he didn't, to make Thor feel better. Like, no. But the fact that he could move it a little shows that his.
But I like that idea.
But I like that idea.
Winter Soldier was right before that, and they say that in Winter Soldier, like, it's like, he didn't immediately go to Tony and go, "Hey, I just found this out, this weird thing." He's like, I'll keep that to my chest, That's the
way they play it in that movie. There is some ambiguity. Like, Steve knew but didn't want to know. Like, so the information was there. He never confirmed it, so because he didn't want to know that.
It's turmoil. He doesn't know.
So when he's like, well, I wasn't sure. It's like, bullshit.
Oh, and that's why the Bucky situation is always just so sticky, because he's like, you feel for Cap. He's like, he is a good guy. He's really not his fault. Like, he did nothing objectively, if you want to believe all the like, I mean,
he was controlled and all that. Like, now that he's more himself, he's trying to get better. And there's that whole that you have to have the first Avenger to make that work, because everything there echoes the first Avenger, because now he's defending Bucky like Bucky used to defend him. He's using the same sort of lines. So it's like, it's heartbreaking, because it's the same principle being applied, but it's working against Tony. Yeah, and it's
the way that that's why it's a magic trick, because it's the exact. We've talked about this ad nauseum before, but it's just in such a wonderful magic trick how they're literally the opposite. But you need Winter Soldier to get you there. You need everything to get you there.
Well, that's why it worked. The MCU, there's a much more careful architecture there, but they get lucky a lot.
Yeah.
But the reason they get lucky is because, like you said, first of all, you've got great writers behind the scenes that have been there that don't necessarily get the same credit. But then they always sort of switch up the directors to have people sort of work with those writers to bring in fresh perspectives.
Well, and they're big. They talk about this too. I think when like Kevin Feige or somebody mentioned that their big secret weapon, which we never talk about, is their casting, because their casting sustains them over bad movies. Iron Man 2, you like him, you like what's his name, Sam Rockwell, you like all these. It's like it's enjoyable to watch just because of that. Thor: The Dark World, not a great script, but it's fun to watch both of them. Like Loki is great in it. It's like those characters and those actors are just enjoyable to watch, and they're so good at those characters. That's why, like, as much, I mean, outside Civil War is probably a part of that. I mean, Ragnarok's my other favorite too. So my Ragnarok's like, it's just amazing.
Well, I won't beat this point to death, but what really the reason that works is because the DC movies have good casting too. The problem is, like in MCU, whatever they're doing with it, because sometimes they're just playing off the hip and they get lucky,
right,
or they're going in without a script sometimes and just like flubbing it. But there's always a reverence and love of the characters.
Right.
They enjoy those characters, and then you enjoy the characters, and that carries you through a movie that otherwise doesn't work very well.
I mean,
and that's where, at least from the Superman side of it, like to me, Aquaman was a great deal of fun because they have fun with it. And you can tell they're loving that character. They're not embarrassed to be making an Aquaman movie. They're just going for it. They're going to do it.
I mean, that's why
what Thor plays.
Well, that's why, as much as, I mean, and all these decisions come down from, not he's making all the decisions, but Kevin Feige is actually the secret of that, because you can't have, like, their test of a studio's with when he's gone in 20 years if they do the same quality, because he just has good taste. And he has his hand in everything, and he knows. It's not. I'm not saying he's a genius, but he knows. It's just like once you get Filoni and Favreau kind of overseeing the show and that stuff, it's like, it's pretty good, solid stuff now because they like the material and they know what will play. That's what Feige's like too. They go off the bat, but they know what will play. They're like, that'll work. It's like
the danger with Feige is that you get one person has too much control. You have to worry a little bit because there's some stuff like the Netflix TV shows or even Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or these offshoots that he didn't necessarily sanction at the time, that you really should allow those into the canon because the audience embraced them. And even though you had a boss that greenlit those things and you didn't get a say in that, just go ahead. There's no harm to you.
I think that's the rumor.
That canon.
That's the one big rumor for Spider-Man, is that Charlie Cox will be in that movie.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Which is awesome.
And there's a lot of talk about the Netflix characters, at least as far as Punisher. No word on Luke Cage. That's where you guys get your finger out of your ass.
He's the best Luke Cage in the world, that actor. I forgot his name. He's great.
Yeah, Mike Coulter.
Yeah.
Luke Cage. And you only had 2 seasons for that show. Jessica Jones had 3.
Yeah.
Iron Fist got 2 seasons. That's embarrassing for Luke Cage. Come on. I still haven't finished the 2nd season of Iron Fist.
But you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that he makes all the right decisions, but I think he has good taste.
No, he's great at what he does.
And that's like
I'm just saying there's always a danger when you have one person that has too much say in the overall canon. You got to keep an eye on that, no matter how great that person is.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. It's like when you talk about, like, what's the best form of government? It's like a benevolent dictator. If you actually have somebody that's good, it's fine if they tell everybody what to do. But that doesn't work as a system, because you don't know who's coming in next. That's like,
it's a scary thing. It's like Star Wars.
Everybody said to Steve Jobs, he's like, Steve Jobs, like, no, you have to be opinionated. It's like, well, it only works because you have good taste in this. It only works because you're here. And what you see with Apple, they kind of go every direction once he died. You know what I mean? It's like, it's true. It's like, once you have to have somebody with good taste that has a vision that goes, this is what I'm doing. You know.
Otherwise, in the absence of that person, you have to have lots of people of vision, and that's more difficult.
And that's sort
like you said, mostly you get people that have no vision and then just kind of keep things.
And I have no problem with Kathleen Kennedy. I don't want her to get fired. I don't want her, I think she does fine.
I don't care.
But I do think that is the issue with the cohesiveness of that. Like, they're sort of getting that now with the TV, and hopefully they'll get more power. When John Favreau came in, it was an unexpected one of those too. But Filoni being more in charge of some. I mean, the problem is you will get a certain type of storytelling. He tells a certain type of story, and that's what you get.
What they need to be doing is what they're doing, which is sort of franchise it out. Like the reason I can't watch those Star Wars channels a lot of the time is because they'll be like the Civil War at Lucasfilm. Kathleen Kennedy wants to fire Favreau. It's like, why? She's tired of making money?
Yeah.
No. Obviously, he works for her. He's doing a great job. Why would she want to get rid of him? That makes no sense. But they need this idea because it used to be all under George Lucas. So the fans turned on Lucas when they didn't like Star Wars. And then he gave it over to Disney. They don't have anyone so when they don't like Star Wars, they have to have a figurehead. It's like, must be Kathleen Kennedy's fault. And now that they like Mandalorian, they're like, so everything Jon Favreau does must be good. He should do all the Star Wars. Like, I don't want him to do all the Star Wars things. No.
But also, Kevin Feige is not the CEO of Marvel. Just like Kathleen Kennedy is the CEO. Like Lucas, like, what does she need to be doing with story? Like, she doesn't need to be the fan that you guys think she needs to be. You need to have. I mean, you need to have people like story groups and stuff, and that's what they have. You know,
they just need a bad guy. I mean, there's a bunch of toxic shit that goes into why they chose her specifically to be the bad guy.
No, she's a woman too. That's what.
But yeah, because those channels that tend to turn on her tend to trend in other areas too.
What's so crazy about that is like that woman produced your childhood. Every Indiana Jones movie, Back to the Future, Jurassic Park, all these things. Like in my top 5, like 7 of probably my top 10 movies as a kid. Like like,
but in their version of the narrative, she was just the secretary back then.
Yeah.
Like, look, how do you think anybody gets to a higher position in these roles? You work with someone, you're assistant to someone, you associate produce, then you're a producer, you're an executive producer, you're an executive. Like, this is a person for 40 years working way up the ladder. And now, because she didn't start at the top of the ladder, you're saying she never earned her place there? She's working on the biggest movies of all time.
Yeah.
As the lowest rung, as the middle rung, and now as the highest rung. And they're still big. Now, I'm not trying to just throw out any criticism of her, but give me a valid criticism. Like, if you just don't like a Star Wars movie, you can't just pick the first name that you see in the credits and say that's the person who made it bad.
Right. Yeah, and that's also, it's just, that's a whole nother can of worms and all those things. But, I mean, I do think...
Yeah, Star Wars is difficult stuff to
Star Wars is difficult stuff, but it's also the same thing with DC, and maybe that's why they cling on to Snyder so much. We can maybe transition to that. That's probably a good idea. But like, it's because you do need people want a savior, man. You know, they'll all give Kevin Feige all the praise and stuff, but he'll like, this is all these directors and people were hired, guys. It's not me. I mean, it is him because he has the sense to keep it open and keep.
You need someone with an eye to architecture.
But it's like everybody though. That's the thing. You know, it's not one formula. You can't have one. It's like. Movies are miracles when they're amazing. You know what I mean? When they're good.
Well, the MCU is a miracle. Like, a lot of smart people did a lot of smart stuff, but then there's a lot of crazy stuff that just happened to work. It's why it's so hard to replicate, because no one can figure out how it happened, even the people that did it. It's a hard thing to do, and you can't just say, well, they did it right, and that's why it works. Like, they just got lucky on some stuff, but mostly their hearts were in the right place when they were doing the right things, and that's why they work.
And they just flexible.
There's like a school of thought that says like the Snyder Cut is like a win for toxic fans. I don't agree with that at all. But Snyder does end up being an easy savior type to that certain toxic group, because his stuff had more of a toxic tone to it. So when people didn't turn to it, they're like, he was doing the right thing. I can't wait to see the Snyder Cut because I got this feeling.
I'm excited. I mean, again,
there's like, first of all, it's going to be a 4-hour movie instead of being 1 hours.
Yeah, I watch like Titans and other stuff just because you're like, I want to watch superhero stuff. I don't care what it is. You know, it's like, let's watch it.
Just from a perspective of film, I'm interested in this. This is a weird thing to be happening. But now there's like a rumor going around that it will end on a massive cliffhanger. It's like, if he does this, I will love this, because this will be like an almost obvious fuck you if he deliberately makes a 4-hour movie. Could be broken up into 2 movies. No, 1 4-hour movie.
Well, I think it is a cliffhanger too, because
it's created to be the last of its kind, no follow-up planned, and it ends on a cliffhanger. That would be. No, that'd be almost a classy move.
I think by its nature, it's going to be that, because this is always going to be the first of 2 Justice League movies? Like,
well, it's hard to
Darkseid is going to be the next one, right?
Yeah, but they went through so many plans because the first plan didn't make it past the script stage because they were like, we cannot make that movie. So when they started filming Justice League, it was already version 2 of his vision.
Right.
And the original vision just being Superman becoming evil, and the whole trilogy is about trying to stop evil Superman. And they're like, no, that won't work. So I don't know when he went into filming Justice League what the vision was of that. But clearly they've gone back and shot new stuff. So whatever this is clearly an altered from the version 2 that he shot, because they're not just using the stuff that they shot. They gave him like a blank check, like, go nuts with this. And you hear stuff like, we shot a Joker scene because why not? So there's stuff in this that wasn't part of the original vision, was not part of the amended vision. It's just now that I get to play, I'm going to do this other thing. And it's also made with the knowledge that he's probably not going to get to do another one. So if it ends on a cliffhanger, that's just a deliberate choice. That's not like a bid to get another movie made. Although if it makes money, maybe it could.
I'm on board with you for all sorts of reasons. One, it's not like I don't have any kind of, I don't have we know our feelings on BVS. I don't really care about Justice League. I was done by BVS, so I'm like, or by Justice League, so I'm like, okay. So for one, I'm very interested just to see how it plays out and what the kind of cultural of those people that really wanted it. Like sometimes it's not always great to get what you want. I was like, I want to see how this is. It going to turn into like, this is Citizen Kane of like these things, or it's going to be like, it's like, is it going to be scripture after this point or not? But I'm also just interested to see, it's like, is it the same? Because what I always thought was that the Justice League we saw, still the movie, the arc and the story is still like the same. They just changed a bunch of like punch up stuff in different scenes. Like it starts with and and what's his name? Steppenwolf comes, he attacks stuff, and everything I've seen looks like that's true. There's just that it's more backstory. So I was like, are we gonna just have like 4 hours of backstory and then the same story? Does it end with Steppenwolf in that town? And he gets beheaded, and it's like the same kind of thing. You're like, okay.
It's just bloodier. It's just like 4 hours and R-rated.
It's the same. If it's the same story with more
same beats, just dragged out.
Well, that's what I'm saying though. To me, I'm not super excited about it because it's not that I wasn't going, God, I wish I see Cyborg playing a football game right now. It was like I wasn't waiting. I was like, it just wasn't a great structure of a story.
Here's a side note that I don't understand. So many iterations of this movie and so much money getting popped into it. Why does Cyborg look so shitty? Still.
Yeah.
Like, that's such a bad design. He looks like bad CGI the whole time. He doesn't look like a robot man. It just looks like weird CGI done on the fly at the last minute. It does not look good. Now, unless we're not seeing the final, like, unless they changed it again. Like, I know in the Joss Whedon one, they just put him in a hoodie half the time because he just looked like garbage when he was Cyborg.
Right. And that's why, it's just like, I just wonder if it's gonna be like, but he's like Superman's in a black costume. Like, get the difference? You're like, okay, and it's like because it also looks like some of the scenes. It feels like because I know they're Joss Whedon scenes because of the mustache stuff. Like they show him talking to his mom and Lois out in that field,
which is weird because Snyder said he wasn't going to use any of the Whedon.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. So that must have just been so either
unless they're adding out the trailer with stuff that is.
Well, they said they wouldn't. So what I'm saying is that was actually shot originally, and it was just not a really well written scene, and then they just came to rewrite the scene to make it fit the. So it's weird. I'm just going to see alternate takes of basically the same story, with like different dialogue.
Have we ever talked about?
You know what I mean? I'm like
when they did the Exorcist prequel. Did you ever see that?
No, I never saw that.
You should do this before the Snyder Cut comes out. You get time. But I did this one day. This was not quite 20 years ago, but it was a long time ago. They decided to make that Exorcist prequel, and they hired Paul Schrader.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Schrader went out and he shot the Exorcist prequel, and then the studio looked at it and they didn't like it. And they fired Schrader, and they brought in Rennie Harlan, and they just got him to reshoot the whole movie.
Gina Davis.
So... Yeah, with Gina Davis. No, they had already split up, I think, at that point. But So it's mostly the same movie, but it does go in different directions. And then the movie came out, and people didn't like it. So they're like, wait, we have this other version of this movie in the can. So they released the Snyder Cut. And they renamed it. It was called Dominion, I think. An Exorcist prequel. Like a year later, had a limited theatrical release, I believe. Came out on video for sure. And I watched these things back to back one Saturday. And it was so funny because the story, they didn't really change the script very much. They did, but it's not like they threw the script out and rewrote it. They just got a different director's vision. So some of the scenes is shot, like a couple of the shots, I think, they used from the Schrader, but most of it they reshot. And they're both bad.
Right.
That's what's funny. It's like you had a bad script. Like you can't go, and I don't care how many times you shoot the movie, it's written badly. So if you get a chance, watch those two versions of that movie, because that's what I feel like what you're saying. I would be disappointed if we went into the Snyder's Cut and it was just a big, long, different version of the same movie.
It's like
and
the music
video
version of that movie. You're like, okay, I get it. It's like,
it's not as goofy and it's not as lighthearted. Like, it's R-rated now, so that's cooler. This was my vision.
Is it R-rated?
Yes, it's R-rated.
Oh wow! So and just to have like the nightmare sequence, what doesn't make any sense at all. Like, there's just weird stuff in there. It's like there's like, oh, and this is the one we kill Lois Lane, because what are you gonna do with her? Like, and we kill Martha.
Yeah, we don't like.
That's
we kill everybody.
That's my favorite Zack Snyder quote. The Jimmy Olsen's like, we killed him. We thought we had a little fun with it. It's like, and you killed him. That's the thing.
Because fuck you.
I like Zack Snyder. I like 300. I like Dawn of the Dead. I'm excited to see the new zombie movie he has. I think he is a great visual director. I think he has a lot of style, and he's pretty.
I think you can make a movie that I enjoy too. Even the Snyder Cut. Like, do something. Show me that your vision works. You got
I'm rooting for it. I have nothing against him. I don't think he's like some. I actually like him. So I mean, I have nothing.
I also feel like this cliffhanger that this thing is going to lead off on is probably a lead into the Flash movie.
Right.
If it really does end in a cliffhanger, then it's their introduction to the multiverse that is going to take us to the Flash movie. Because there's all this talk. First of all, they signed that we should get into our other Superman news, because this is going to lead into that. But there's all this talk that they renewed their contract with Henry Cavill to have him feature in other movies. And we know that was a few months ago that they said that they had renegotiated and they had signed him on, not necessarily to star in Superman movies, but at least to appear in other films as Superman. None of which have manifested. I don't believe he hasn't been announced to be part of the Flash movie. He's definitely not a part of the Shazam sequel, so far as what they have said. And there's also talk that they might bring in Ben Affleck's Batman in the Flash movie too. So they're obviously going to try to springboard this Flash movie off of the DCEU that they built in these previous movies. So why not just use the Justice League cut, this new cut, as the lead in to that?
Yeah, who cares? Yeah, that's like the Joker movie was a different movie, and also I don't know what universe that Wonder Woman movie existed in. It's not the same world. That's like, sorry, the world would not be the same after that movie. After that,
and who cares?
It's like,
I like the idea of just do what you do.
Comic book. So who gives a crap? Just make it, move on. It's like, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah,
I mean, Marvel is the only
like that's the one thing they've seized onto. What if it's just a multiverse? Like, yeah, every one of these could be an alternate version of some other thing. That's true.
I mean, Marvel is the only one that's actually like, they have stakes on the table, because they are saying that they really do a lot to do the continuity. So if something changed, it'd be like, wait a second. But they haven't done anything in these things. It's like when the X-Men movies, the Fox movies, are like, yeah, it's like 30 years later, and they're like 2 years older. It's like, all right, like that wasn't what was bad about those movies. They had other problems, but I didn't care that they're in the 80s and they were in the 60s.
No, the continuity issues aren't that big a problem.
It felt like a comic book thing. It's like, this is just this run. Now they're in the 80s.
Yeah.
And it's the same. It's like, okay, who cares?
And it's been 20 years, so who cares? They're going to do soft reboots along the way. You can't have a 20 to 30 year franchise with no continuity errors. Even the MCU doesn't have that.